federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't. And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence. And that is the line that I think we have to be willing to contend with.
Several months later,
the courts, if they were to proceed without any check on their power, without any balance on their power, then we will start to see an undemocratic and frankly dangerous authoritarian expansion of power in the Supreme Court, which is what we are seeing now, from the overturning of abortion rights to the ruling that discrimination and frankly stripping the full personhood and dignity of LGBTQ people in the United States. These are the types of rulings that signal a dangerous creep towards authoritarianism and centralization of power in the court.
All right, guys. So once again, we got to talk about the Democrats and their reaction to recent Supreme Court decisions that they don't like. And as per the usual, the Democrat reaction is ridiculous and over the top, okay? You have people like AOC coming out here and calling for Supreme Court justice to be impeached, calling for expansion of the Supreme Court because she really is the true authoritarian in this country. When Democrats talk about being against fascism, they're actually projecting, okay? They are actually the fascist party in the United States. And interviews like this that AOC did on CNN is exactly what I'm talking about, okay? Because she's going to throw a fit over the Supreme Court, issuing rulings that she disagrees with, and claiming that the conservative justice majority is pulling the country towards authoritarianism. Again, this is simply a projection, right, of what Democrats actually believe in. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it.
Here with me now is Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Let's start with the student loan decision. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote that the Constitution does not allow the president the power to unilaterally forgive student loans. It's up to you in Congress to make this kind of sweeping change.
Which, I mean, again, anybody with any basic knowledge of the role of Congress, okay, versus the president versus the courts, should understand that this is the correct decision, okay? The power of the purse lies with Congress, okay? The president just can't unilaterally make decisions like that. But again, this is something that Democrats, they don't seem to understand this concept. Maybe because they haven't really read the Constitution, right? They don't really, know basic civics.
Early in his presidency, I think you remember, even President Biden said he doesn't have that authority. What's your response to the court's decision?
What the court was also ruling on was with respect to the HEROES Act. But our response is very strong in that Congress has given the president that authority in the Higher Education Act. The president very squarely has, as well, using his Secretary of Education, the ability to cancel student loans. But as we've seen, not just in what we saw ruled from the majority, but even in the minority dissent written around these cases, we have justices saying that the Supreme Court is going themselves much too far. They are expanding their role into acting as though they are Congress itself.
Yeah, so I want you to understand the argument here, right? I want you to understand the argument. AOC is arguing that the Supreme Court is expanding their power, acting as if they're Congress, because they told the President of the United States that he can't overstep his executive authority and do something that Congress is supposed to do, right? I want you guys to understand how silly that sounds, right? It's so silly, right? This is what they're arguing. The Supreme Court is going too far, right? They're going too far because they're telling the president that, hey, you actually need to go through Congress to do something that is explicitly outlined in the Constitution that Congress is supposed to do, right? Again, it just blows my mind. Boy. Yo, the arguments from these people, they just get sillier and sillier and sillier. Because this is what you have to do to justify authoritarianism, right? This is actual real authoritarianism right here, is what AOC is engaged in. And this is why they have to bend over backwards and give these silly arguments to justify their outrage, their fake outrage, is because they're authoritarians. They actually, what they really want to do, they want to limit the power of the court. They either want to limit the power of the court because it has a conservative majority, or again, what AOC wants to do is expand the court, okay, to have more liberals, right? That's what she wants to do. And at that point, I guarantee you she wouldn't be sitting here arguing, talking about the court is overstepping their power. If the court would rule in favor of liberals every single time, right, they rule in favor of Democrats, she wouldn't be saying this, okay? She's only saying this because they're issuing rulings that she doesn't like. But as you hear here, the Democrats are going to try again, right? They're going to use another justification for trying to forgive student loans that they know is going to get shot down. They know it's going to get shot down, and they're going to do it. They're going to do it anyways, okay? They're going to trick people into voting for them, thinking that, hey, they're going to get their student loans, forgiven or whatever, and it's not going to happen.
And that, I believe, is an expansion of power that we really must be focusing on. The danger of this court and the abuse of power in this court, particularly as it is related to the entanglements around conflicts of interest as well.
You mentioned the Higher Education Act. President Biden came out and proposed a different path forward for student loan forgiveness under certain circumstances. Listen to what he said.
We will ground this new approach in a different law than my original plan, the so-called Higher Education Act. This new path is legally sound. It's going to take longer, but in my view, it's the best path that remains to providing for as many borrowers as possible with debt relief.
If it was legally sound, right? If it was legally sound, then why didn't you go with that from the start, right? Why would you not go with the legally sound route, a route that you know you're going to be able to win on, right? Allegedly, they know. Why didn't you do that? Right? Well, they didn't do it because it's not legally sound. He's not going to be able to do it, right? This is just another trick from the Democrat Party to play off the ignorance of their base. That's what I try to tell you guys all the time about Democrats. They thrive off ignorance. They thrive off people not understanding how the three branches of government work, okay? They thrive off of that. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. The Supreme Court already said, look, you need explicit permission from Congress to do this. You don't have it, right? Biden's like, all right, well, you know what? We're going to try to do it under another law. And they're going to say the exact same thing. They're going to say the exact same thing, okay? This is ridiculous. Instead of actually legislating, right, which is what this should be done, right? This is what should be done on this issue if they want to do it. No, they don't want to legislate. They want to rule by executive fiat, right? That's what they want. That's what they want. But then AOC will turn around and cry authoritarianism when it's like, you guys are authoritarians. You're trying to overstep the Supreme Court, and you've done this before in the past. Remember when the Supreme Court ruled that rent moratorium had to be lifted, right? Democrats said, nah. We're going to just ignore it, right? We're just going to flat out ignore this ruling because we don't agree with it, right? But again, they want to accuse everybody else of being authoritarians when they clearly... they don't respect the court because the court doesn't agree with them, okay? And now they want to make this argument that the court has gotten too powerful because the court is stopping them from doing the authoritarian things that they claim that the GOP and everybody else is doing. Again, it's just projection.
So just to be clear, he is saying that what he wants to do now is to try to use his executive power under what you were mentioning, the Higher Education Act, which is different from what the Supreme Court struck down. You are not only a member of Congress, I believe you still have student loans. This plan could take up to a year to take effect. Is there more that he could or should be doing?
He should be telling people to pay their loans, right? Look, suck it up and pay your loans. And if anything, people paying their loans, it helps out with inflation, man. It takes more money out of the economy. That he should just be telling people, look, y'all had relief for the longest time. You got to start paying your loans back. It is what it is. That's what he should be saying. He should be actually proposing a plan, if he actually cared about this issue, to fix the problem, to make sure that kids aren't going to school with all this debt, okay, in the first place. But see, Democrats never want to fix the root of the problem. They want to throw a Band-Aid on it and then wait for the Band-Aid to fall off. The wound is not healed, and then they want to put another Band-Aid on it. Again, this doesn't address what happens in the future when more students take out student loans. Are we just going to forgive their debt too? Because at that point, if you forgive one generation's debt, then the future generations, you have to forgive their debt. They're going to have an argument and say, look, we need to have our student loan debt forgive as well too. So what happens? Then you have to forgive everybody's student loan debt. And at that point, you just have free college, right? At that point, you might as well just go towards free college. I mean, that's what these far left progressives want anyways. So I'm just saying, here's the Democrat Party, and this is what they do. They play off of people's ignorance, okay? They sell people this idea that the government's going to give them something. They don't actually require people to be responsible and to take accountability for their actions. You took out a loan, you have to pay it back. And I have student loans, right? I have student loans. Now, I ain't got hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans, right? I got like a minimum amount compared to the rest, a lot of other people, but still, I have them. And at the end of the day, I can't be mad if I'm forced to pay them back. I mean, that's just silly. But again, the Democrats, the way they get votes, okay, the way they get young votes, more specifically, is telling young people, hey, don't take responsibility for your actions. Nothing's your fault. The government's going to come in and relieve you of all responsibility and accountability for the things that you did, for the decisions that you made. And they do that with every segment of society, with every so-called oppressed or minority group. It's never your fault, right? It's the government's fault, right? It's the white man's fault. Okay, this is what they do. And again, this is how they get votes, and it's just sad and it's pathetic. But again, they're playing off people's ignorance.
Yes, I believe that there are several steps that we should be considering as well to go a step beyond. I would like to see interest payments suspended during this time, especially during that 12-month ramp up period. There are millions of people in this country that have student loan debt amounts under $10,000 or $20,000 as outlined in the plan. People should not be incurring interest during this 12-month on-ramp period. So I highly urge the administration to consider suspending those interest payments. Of course, we still believe in pursuing student loan cancellation and acting faster than that 12-month period wherever possible. What we have been really articulating this plan using the Higher Education Administration, the Higher Education Act for some time. Myself, as well as other members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, met with the White House, recently around this plan, as well as many other advocates in the space as well. And we truly believe that Congress has given the president this authority. The Supreme Court is far overreaching their authority, and I believe, frankly, that we really need to be having conversations about judicial review as a check on the courts as well.
Judicial review, right? A check on the courts. Let's listen to AOC expand on that.
Congresswoman, you've called on President Biden to expand the Supreme Court to 13 justices. But even after Roe was overruled last year and this past week, what we saw with affirmative action and other cases, I want you to listen to what President Biden said. He just said this on Thursday on MSNBC.
I think if we start the process of trying to expand the court, we're going to politicize it maybe forever in a way that is not healthy.
That you can't get back.
That you can't get back.
I'd like you to respond to that. And also, you mentioned a moment ago judicial review. Are you also saying that the justices' power should somehow be limited?
I truly do, and this is not a new development in history. This is part of our system of checks and balances. The courts, if they were to proceed without any check on their power, without any balance on their power, then we will start to see an undemocratic and frankly dangerous authoritarian expansion of power.
You know what's hilarious about this, right? AOC is the same person that called for government oversight. Okay, government oversight on TV shows like Tucker Carlson, right? Because Tucker Carlson says things that she disagrees with, okay? But again, she's concerned about authoritarianism, okay? This is what she's concerned about, while at the same time being the biggest authoritarian in Congress. Second of all, again, I don't know if AOC, again, took a civics course, right, in high school, but there are checks and balances, okay? The executive branch and the legislative branch checks the Supreme Court, as it seems Supreme Court checks the legislative branch and the executive branch, and the legislative branch checks the executive branch and the judicial branch. Like, they all check each other, right? The president can appoint justices. Justices can also be impeached. There are numerous checks and balances already in place, okay? The checks and balances are there. You just don't like the fact that the Democrats don't have the power, okay? Because they don't have the votes in Congress. Enough people didn't vote for them to do anything about the fact that the conservative court, okay, is making rulings that you disagree with.
In the Supreme Court, which is what we are seeing now, from the overturning of abortion rights to the ruling that discrimination and, frankly, stripping the full personhood and dignity of LGBTQ people in the United States. These are the types of rulings that signal a dangerous creep towards authoritarianism and centralization of power in the court. In fact, we have members of the court themselves, with Justice Elena Kagan, saying that the court is beginning to assume the power of a legislature. And right now,
yeah, and Biden's not right. And Biden's not assuming the power of a legislator when he tries to unilaterally forgive student loans on a broad scale. Right? He's not assuming the power of Congress. This is ridiculous. Does this person hear themselves? Right? Do you hear yourself talk? Right? Are you listening to yourself talk right now, AOC? This is crazy.
Now, whether it is expansion of the court.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to, how do you do that? How are you proposing a law or a bill?
There's several ways. First, we have a Senate Judiciary Committee that is beginning the process of investigating the entanglements and conflicts of interest. Just 1 to 2 weeks before the student loan ruling, the country learned that Justice Samuel Alito was accepting gifts from billionaires who were lobbying against Supreme Court that were lobbying before the Supreme Court against student loan forgiveness. Just weeks before, we learned that he was accepting gifts from them and travel and vacations from them before he decided to vote and rule in their favor. And so I believe that if Chief Justice Roberts will not come before Congress for an investigation voluntarily, I believe that we should be considering subpoenas. We should be considering investigations. We must pass much more binding and stringent ethics guidelines where we see members of
so ethics guidelines, right? Hey, I kind of agree with that, but we got to start with you first, AOC, okay, and the President of the United States, because AOC was subject to an ethics investigation. Right? Joe Biden is currently on investigation. Let's start with y'all first, okay? And then we can investigate the Supreme Court, okay? Let's start with you first, okay? Let's start with you first.
We see members of the Supreme Court potentially breaking the law, as we saw in the refusal, with Clarence Thomas to recuse himself from cases implicating his wife in January 6th. There also must be impeachment on the table. We have a broad level of tools to deal with misconduct, overreach, and abuse of power.
So there you go. There's your checks and balances. Again, unfortunately for Democrats, they don't have the votes to actually enact any of this stuff because, again, the people didn't vote enough Democrats in Congress for them to do this stuff. And thank God that the people didn't vote enough Democrats in Congress to do this because, again, they would go full-blown authoritarian, which is exactly what AOC is advocating for here.
And the Supreme Court has not been receiving the adequate oversight necessary in order to preserve their own legitimacy. And in the process, they themselves have been destroying the legitimacy of the court, which is profoundly dangerous for our entire democracy.
Yeah, so again, I guarantee you, if the court was full of liberals, she wouldn't be saying the same thing. She's only saying that because they made rulings against, things that, she agrees with, right? And that's all this is, right? Democrats, when they lose, when they don't get their way, again, they want to basically overthrow the Constitution, right? They want to overthrow the government. This is what she's calling for. She's literally calling for overthrowing the Supreme Court, right? Overthrowing a whole branch of the government because she can't get her way, her authoritarian way. And then she wants to turn around and point the fingers at other people and claim that they're authoritarians. Again, this is just projection. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.